Hello there, it's Scott at the Agile 20 Reflect Festival. That's the festival. It's going to be in February. It's kind of been a pop-up festival, so we haven't used any of the existing organizations. We've pulled together lots of volunteers. Um, the big theme that developed out of everything we're doing is bringing people together. And I wanted to talk to Sanjiv about bringing people together. So would you like to introduce yourself a little bit for those people that haven't, that don't know you, and Lightspeed?
So thank you, Scott, for the opportunity. I'm always happy to connect with Agilists, and it's a special privilege to connect with Agilists across the world. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sanjiv Augustine, and I've been in the Agile community for, it's hard to believe, 20 years. So it got
Wow.
started at about the time that the manifesto was written. And I entered Agile from a slightly different angle or perspective that a lot of others in the Agile community have. And that was from the perspective of a manager. I was given responsibility for three teams. In those days, it was XP, Extreme Programming Teams. And those of you who've seen my talks have probably heard this little ditty
Yeah, yeah.
or this little anecdote. But I'll tell you what I was told. It's like, hey, we got these teams. We don't quite know how to manage them. Can you go figure it out? You're a manager. You have this sort of weight of working with people and working with teams. So I went and got the book from Kent Beck's book and from the bookstore, and it was Extreme Programming Explained. And I looked for the role of the manager. Well, it turned out that there was one paragraph in that book that talked about the role of the manager, and I don't remember the entire paragraph, but there's one line that I'll never forget. It said, "The role of a manager on an XP team or an Agile team is to remove impediments for the team and to bring the team pizza." So I said, okay, well, I think I can, I, I think I can
but
handle
not more,
that. We'll get
but not
started.
more than two pizza because your team's too big.
That's right. That came later. It's the two pizza rule. So we've evolved since then. There's a lot more to agile management. I'm looking forward to talking about some of those lessons that I've learned and evolved myself over the last 20 years.
Yeah, yeah. There's a real simplicity into the whole XP side. I reread the book. I had it on the shelf, and I hadn't opened it for a while. And really, the amount of people that have said that they started in XP, yeah, and that's it. The XP is the place they've started. And I wish more people could start there. So I wish generations are. There's lots of other lovely methods out there that people are coming into, but XP, that's you're like the third speaker now that said,
Well, if you've been long enough and if you stay around long enough, you'll eventually find our way back to some of the first principles of agile methods, which is if you're doing software, that is software engineering, good software discipline, and the whole DevOps movement is actually rooted in XP, as you
yeah,
know.
yeah. And actually, I go back to like Deming and and when there's a lot in XP. When I read XP first time, I went, well, this echoes to the 14 points. Going
Yeah.
back to about
QA.
90, yeah, going back to like 96 behind my desk. There was the 14 points, and every day I would look at them, and again that manager's role piece,
Yeah.
is in there. It managers job is to get away from the workers and to let the workers do the work and to let them define the quality and things. So these are great cadence things. I want to talk about bringing people together, and so I don't know how we first kind of hooked up on social media, but I've admired your posts over the years, and I admire them for two things. One is that you always seem to take a very human, very I'm not going to say liberal. I'm going to say a very empathetic route. I have seen you respond vehemently to some folks when they've just maybe gone a bit too hard either way. So, but I love the courage you have in that. I also, I love the things you share. I love your work, and I've been, and again, I've been watching your videos, and that's really interesting. So I want to understand how you can bring people together that other people are avoiding. How do you do that?
So that's a great question. I'm going to share my personal philosophy, and I'm not sure it's going to work for everybody, but here it is. And my personal approach is based in something that was called the via media, which is the middle way. And so the middle way, if you look back to philosophy or you look back to Anglican tradition, that's where it comes from. is a tradition of moderation. Now we have to be careful, as you've said. Moderation is not weakness, right? Moderation is not a compromise, a weak compromise, or a diffuse compromise. And so the via media, if you look at it, is based on the concept of the golden mean. What is the strong position? What is the strong middle position among the weak positions among the extremes? Now we live in a society and at a time where the extremes have sort of taken over, right? Whether it's
Definitely.
extreme right or extreme left, and we live in a society where our tools and social media, if you watch The Social Dilemma, amplify those signals.
Yeah.
But here's what I take solace in. I take solace in the fact that within the Agile community, the vast majority of people are committed to that strong middle, right? It's the strong position that is opposed to the extremes. So if we work towards that, the question is, how do you do that? So again, I have to bring in a bit of a religious metaphor or term over here, and this is called the generous orthodoxy. Within the Agile movement, we have an orthodoxy. We have a tradition, we have some values, we have a manifesto. That's our orthodoxy. Wherever you're coming from, we all believe in that, right? If otherwise we're not agile, right? So we're saying, hey, there are some principles that we believe in. There's individuals and interactions over processes and tools, and those are things that we hold self-evident, if you will, to use an Americanism. And
I
yet
thought
at the
Trump
same
broke. I thought Trump broke. We hold these things to be self-evident.
yeah,
Putting kids in
yeah,
cages was a bad idea.
yeah. Well, I'll get to the political stuff later. So don't poke the bear. So
Or his bare
uh,
arms.
yeah, there is a tradition to which we subscribe. Right? There's an orthodoxy to which we all say it, whether it's or we all believe it, whether it's explicit or implicit. However, if you get too fanatic about that, then it becomes intolerant. It becomes illiberal. You use that term, liberal, earlier, and so being orthodox and just taking that orthodoxy to the extreme is not good, especially in a time of rapid change and transformation that we live in. So if you combine orthodoxy with a generosity towards other individuals, other points of view that don't agree with us, that drives us in a different direction. And that also allows us to change or evolve that orthodoxy. So a generous orthodoxy is really a personal position that allows us to take that via media.
Yes, I'm actually going to, when I get off this call, I'm going to go and message Dave Snowden and say,
Okay.
I'm not the vicar of Bray. I don't keep changing my religion depending on who's in
That
power.
changes all the time.
I'm just using the Via Media and a generous orthodoxy, Dave.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Then be
send him this.
prepared for him to come back at you.
He will. He will.
Jamie.
So I'm going to pick up on a couple of themes. Oddly, there's a couple of things that resonated in there, and so the first thing, when we were doing a lot of discussion about how do we pull everyone together into the festival, and how does it work, I actually picked up on the Anglican Synod as a model. Okay, I didn't go for the Scottish. I didn't go for the Scottish system because it's more like North Korea. We're all going to think the same thing, and there's very little color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
all gray.
Yeah, but there are some nice things in there, and that's much flatter structure. But the Anglican tradition has to balance things with North American views on things, with African views on things. Ethical decisions around about those, and we know from things like things that were very obvious and simple to do in some countries, like ordaining women bishops. Yeah, really difficult to do in some other countries.
Mm-hmm.
And that again is kind of interesting. So when you mentioned that, it came from like the Anglican tradition. What we were trying to do here was create a synod. So we're not expecting everyone to have the same views, but we are expecting everyone to share those views and talk about those views well. I don't see a lot of generous orthodoxy, and I think generous orthodoxy would allow us to amplify the things that we know work.
Yeah.
I think at the moment your entry point into your agile is probably the point where you grab onto with white knuckles. So if I came through a Kanban route, I'll be Kanban all the way. It's just like your tribes. Yeah, you kind of your football teams and things, It's almost like it's your kind of first, it's your first entry point. Um, but I'd like to see a bit more discussion. So we've talked briefly there on XP.
Yeah.
So um, we talked to Jim Benson around about, what's what's the similarity between between Scrum and Kanban. Bearing in mind in the past he's been very vocal about criticizing. So again, I'd love to have debate in the festival around about, well, what's the similarity between XP and Scrum? Yeah, and how what did they learn from each other, and what were the roots? So how do we? When I talked to Daniel Mesick, he said invitation's key. So you kind of invite people. Now
Yeah.
I've invited some people and they've said no, not interested at all. Craziness. What you're doing, pulling people together. How do we? And again, I don't believe in forcing people, but how do we make this attractive enough in a way that people feel safe to come in and safe to talk in that with that light of generous orthodoxy?
Yeah, I think you have to start from a position by recognizing that we've had a history of power structures, and the power structures have been very unevenly distributed, which has left a lot of people with a bad taste in their mouth. So even in the Anglican tradition, if you go back to that example, women weren't ordained until very recently. So I'm going to give you the American view, which is the Episcopal tradition, because the Episcopal Church is part of the Anglican Communion. And after the independence here, being associated with the Anglican Church was actually considered an act of against patriotism, right? So it was the patriotic view to create something new. So the Episcopal Church broke that power structure and created a bicameral structure where you have a house of the clergy and the lay delegates, and then power is distributed between those two. So you'll find that there's a federated model where individual people and individual congregations have their own power, and then you have a central governing body. And that's what I like about what you're doing, because what you have is a very, you mentioned Kanban and David Anderson back in the ALN days. He always said we have to make sure that we don't create a fat center. You got a small governing body, and you have individual pockets where people have simple rules by which they can collaborate.
Yeah.
So to bring people together, and this is, by the way, a central tenet of complex adaptive systems, right? To bring people together, what we need to do is to define some very simple rules, both at the local level and at the global level. And that's what you've done a phenomenal job at. And I think that's why your festival is really starting to take off, because you have this thin center, you have this governance, light level of governance, but what you're allowing is a lot of local autonomy, even though you're aligning them, and global alignment. So I think once people recognize that, once they recognize that they have the independence, they have the autonomy, they can do what they need to do, and then they'll step forward. They'll step forward into the conversation. Now, what we have to be careful is not to hew too much towards the complete autonomy, which results in chaos, right? And we've seen all of that, where you see all these discussion groups and people are hurling, abuse at each other. It's like, well, I hate Scrum, I hate Kanban, I hate whatever. Let's start talking about not what we hate, but what we love. What we love about each other. What we love about each other in terms of Agile. What do we love about Kanban? What do we love about Scrum? What do we love about Safe? Right? These sometimes are not used in the same conversation
They're not.
because they create such intense reactions. So if we distill it down to those first principles, what do we love about Agile methods? And whether you call it a manifestation of Safe or a Kanban, or even Lean Startup, or any other scale method, let's start with what is common between us. What is that common sort of tradition? And then how are we going to work together? We have to define that as well. How are we going to work together at a global level, and how are we going to work together at a local level?
Cool. Another area that I'd like your view on, because you're from the business side of things. A lot of the so in the three themes of this, we're always agile in the community, in the past, now, in the future, and that's the three ghosts. And part of me thinks that hopefully, like, this will be like a Christmas Carol, and like Ebenezer will suddenly put some better things in place. At the same time, I'm not trying to recreate the Agile Alliance. They're there and they do things. I'm not trying, and again, it's been great. The Scrum Alliance, Agile Alliance, PMI, everybody, Safe, everybody's been coming into, into support it. So that's quite nice. So we've got this lovely area, but I
Mhm.
think I've created fear. Okay, I think I've created a thing where the ambassadors are a little bit scared as to what they can and can't do, and the speakers are a little bit scared as to what they shouldn't do, and everyone's just a little bit scared because I've created something that or we created. I mean, it wasn't we kind of the idea really developed, but we've created something that's touching on this whole question about who we are and where we're going, at
Yeah,
a time when many people think they've gone the wrong way, and
yeah,
many other people are really excited about the new way it's gone. Um, so so yeah, give me some thoughts around about that. So a lot of the old timers, right, are kind of pulling away and saying it's all gone wrong. Yeah.
yeah.
And a lot of the new people are coming into the business routes and things and going, "This is wonderful. Wish we'd had this 20 years ago." And I'm seeing it all. So it's like tutti frutti ice cream for me. It's
Yeah.
all coming over. It's hard to try and work out what it is. So
Mhm.
what's your? I'm giving you some time to think, but what's your time to addressing this kind of bitterness? Yeah, let's call it, and disappointment, and then also addressing this excitement and
Yeah.
energy.
Well, if we realize and acknowledge that we're all going to have differences, we're going to have differences in opinion. I'm going to give you a perspective, a business perspective, right? So for me, Agile has always been a, a means towards an end. So if you look, yeah, this is why they say it's about creating value. So it's not about agile methods themselves, and people get lost into that. Oh, I'm doing Scrum properly. I'm standing up and sitting down, or I'm doing Kanban. I got a whip limit here and a whip limit there. It has to be about delivering value. So from a business perspective, if we start look at it from an executive's point of view, and that's who I work with, that's who we work with in my company, and be as an executive myself and as somebody who works regularly with agile methods is first and if you approach it from the financial side, it's about generating economic value. But if you look at the good businesses, and I'm using this term deliberately, good business, look at the good businesses. It's not just about it generating economic value, right? So you can see about the stakeholder value being an initial uh, idea whose time has passed and such. And really, if you look at what is the purpose of business, the purpose of business is to serve society, to serve our community, and to serve ourselves, right? And while generating economic value. And to me, that's how we can look at agile methods from the business perspective. Because if you look at that, then what we're trying to do with these communities, whether it's your community or with the Agile Reflect Festival or the Agile Alliance or the Scrum Alliance or any other community, what we're trying to do is to create a platform where individuals can work together. They can create meaning for themselves and for everybody else, right? While generating economic value. So it's both, right? And it's the balance between we got to make sure that we're delivering customer value, economic value, but we're also working together on this platform to create meaning and purpose for ourselves. And that's a fundamental technique, or sorry, a fundamental idea that's carried me forward. I first discovered it in this book from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, where the guy who talks about
Yeah,
flow,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's one of his little, really awesome books that has been a inspiration. I regularly go back and read it and reread it. Is this book called Good Business? So good business is agile.
Okay, I like that. There's something bigger going on as well. I'd met we've set up a review group to make sure our policies and everything are okay. And Padmini's brought in some wonderful people there, and one of them is Ute, and Ute's in Africa just now, and she's using her skill set to do I think it's irrigation projects in Namibia, and really
Mm-hmm.
exciting stuff. And a lot of other people are doing agile in government and agile in helping improve like local governance, and also using agile to help improve the environment locally and things. And I think the huge opportunity of the future is how can we use this way of visualizing, way of talking, way of understanding to to really make a better world. And I think better business is great. I think the thing that unifies us all is better world. I mean, and it's all linked. So let's face it, most of the world is software now.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially COVID, and we've all gone digital. Most business is linked to software. Yeah, and most of the outcomes of the relationship to how the world changes is then again linked to software. So so I think we've all got a lot of common themes in agility, and I think maybe that generous orthodoxy that love the term, that is leading us towards building a better world. So it's a better world we're about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to give you a goal, and this is probably something that you guys already have for yourselves, right?
Go for it.
And that is through your community and our communities and everybody else's community. What we're all about is developing a better world. And how are we doing it? We're evolving a global consciousness through that shared network. It's a shared network. We're all connected. We're connected through Facebook, to whatever social media, through Twitter, through Instagram,
Yeah.
and through each community. And what we're seeing now, and what excites me about what's happening with your particular initiative, or your initiative in particular, is that it's global, right? Just like Agile Methods is global. Certainly, we started and everything started in Salt Lake City here in the U.S. However, Agile Methods are global. I've been to China, I've been to India, I've been to all over the world, and you have Agilists everywhere. And so, if we can connect, or when we can connect all of those people together with this collective goal of making a better world and developing our consciousness, whether you call it through through generous orthodoxy or any other ways, then we will move towards a better world. So shared consciousness through our network, moving forward with Agile as a global movement, right? Evolving our consciousness in that direction. Then we
Yeah.
can sort of leave all the other weak extreme positions on the side and say that's the strong middle.
You've just connected me back to one of my starting points when I met Harrison Owen and with Daniel Mezek, and in preparation to the call, because I went back and read some of his books that I hadn't read. Actually, it was a bit strange. I didn't remember ever reading them, but I remembered believing every word as if I'd read them, and so I just kind of assumed I'd read them and I'd forgotten. But one of the things he talks about there is is the system. You put nutrients in the system. You put active agents in the system. You put you kind of give it some boundaries and things. A lot of what I've been doing here is using the Dave Snowden's kids party rule. You give it some boundaries. You amplify the good stuff, and really it's all just been a huge experiment. Even like from the first time, the first idea to talk to the first person about doing it, it's all been a huge experiment, and we're desperate to see what comes out, and you just put that into context for me. It's I never thought it was developing our conscious, and a lot of the conflict is actually just us the system doing the system's thing to get beyond beyond the conflict. Wow, I like that. Right, let's kind of wrap this up. Anything else? I love that challenge. I'd love what you're in. It's beautiful. But anything to fire us up as we go into it, so we can get more events. Because although we've had a lot of energy and interest, I think there's that mental thing, which is February is after Christmas, and if I could just survive to Christmas, and it's not, because if we are going to get the events out there and people need to kind of find them, we're probably going to need at least them to be in at the first week of January, so people get 3 weeks to advertise them. So we're talking a month. So how do we how do I encourage people, all these people with these ideas, to kind of plant those seeds?
Well, I think you can go to the folks who have large platforms. I think you said you had gotten the support of the Agile Alliance, the Scrum Alliance, and the Scaled Agile Inc. and such. Maybe you just go to them with some requests and say, "Hey, this is our goal. Can you help us spin up some events?" and get their help. And then, of course, you can put that out on your own platforms, because you have a fairly wide reach through your own networks. I would also urge you to go global, right? So we're talking about again, Scaled Agile, Agile Alliance, Scrum Alliance, all headquartered here in the U.S. But there are huge pockets of agility everywhere. You got people in India, Naresh Jain, Dipti Jain. You have people
Yeah,
in New Zealand. Rashida Hoda is over there. You have South Africa, all the folks who are doing stuff in Nigeria, and then of course all of Europe is pretty vibrant. So if you take that global view and say, who's my sponsor, you don't call it a sponsor, what do you call a patron? Okay, who's my patron? Who's my global voice over there? Let me ask them to help me, and then that way you just have the distributed nodes in your network sending that signal out.
Yeah. The words have been really important on the thing. First of all, we called the ambassadors envoys, and then nobody knew what it meant, and they're like, and there's another thing a little, getting the local. Again, I think this is where the fear thing is. I think some of the local ambassadors feel that they've got a little bit of imposter syndrome and they can't go and talk to the big names in their country. And so again, a lot of the I'm probably Alexander Fleming looking at the Petri dish going, I thought the bacillus would have grown a bit more by now. So yeah, no, it's good points actually. Scott Ambler got a message me this morning and says, "Do you need money?" And I went, "No, we don't need money. We need events." And he went, "All right, I'll get off my arse and go and talk to the chapters." And I thought
that's a great network in of itself. All of the Project Management Institute, they have a global network of PMI chapters all over.
Yeah, but it was just lovely that all that kind of happened just naturally happened on Facebook chat, which I like. Yeah, we will get around. The new website's made it really easy for anyone to put events on, and I know you've submitted an event, so we're going to be contacting everyone today just to say, look, on the new interface thing, pop it in there, and we'll just put it in the calendar. One thing we really realized was we didn't want to permission people, because that's an authority kind of. So if you've got something you want to bring at the festival, who the hell am I to say whether or not that's legitimate or not? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So actually, a little bit more of a, would this cause harm? Would this cause offense? Nope. Right. Then you're in, and then that's where we're going to. So again, that's going to swap things around again. Anyway, I look forward to your event, and I'm going to go now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Scott, and I appreciate you having me on this interview.
All
the best, by the way. Yeah.
I appreciate having you as a friend. I know it's been a distant friend. I know it's a social media friend, and I do really, I do really love your posts and and your humanity.
Well, thank you. And well, in this pandemic era, we're all isolated, so we're all distant, even if we live a mile from each other. So we're all connected at the same time. So in the same way.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.